ahead and simply share it with you, which means I'm going to be directly emailing you an encrypted link that'll pull a copy from the data center. That's the quickest way to service the client or to share it. If I'm the actual IT guy myself or the customer and I have access to this web portal, I'm going to hit recover. And it's just going to drop it down simply right to my desktop there. As you can see, it's in the tray. I'll open it up, and voila, there's your document. And you can see it's the same document right here. Very quick and simple, and I hope that you guys like what you're seeing here, because this really changes the game. It's now not just a backup tool. It's an archiving tool, and it's a utility for remote access and sharing of documentation. Okay? So if there are no further technical questions, I'm not seeing any questions here. If you have any questions now from a technology standpoint, please reach out. I'm looking at the Q&A box right now. If there are questions, ask away. If not, that means that I'm doing just an excellent job of telling you about the technology. Okay, we got some questions here. Let's see. What sort of, Mark, I think it's Mark McAfee, excuse me if I'm misreading the name, but what sort of staff do we need to support this? Well, technically this can be done by one person because the partnership with SOS involves us doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you want to drive support through us, fine. If you want to escalate to us as a second measure because you're delivering this as a managed service, which I recommend, it's more profitable for you, then you can escalate to us on a case-by-case scenario. The most labor-intensive portion of this, Mark, is the install process, installing the application, which takes minutes. Okay, you schedule the initial backup, walk away, come back, it's done, and then you set up the subsequent backups. This is a very, very, very automated and an intuitive product. All right. The next question, Neil. What about Linux desktops? Now, Neil, at this point in time, it's a Windows-based application. We have a Mac client that should be released by the end of June or early Q3. In the meantime, if it's not a purely Linux environment, you can map it to a Windows box. So as long as there's a Windows box in the environment, you can get that Linux system backed up. But if it's a purely Linux system, at this time, I wouldn't recommend it. Okay? What about, and Tony, you have a question, what about, let's see here, what about database, what about databases and Exchange? Good question. Now, I'll tell you what, we utilize the VSS API to back up open locked files. However, we do not recommend it on an email database level, okay, for several reasons. With a live database, if you're trying to back it up in live fashion, you're running the risk of missing transactions and also misconfiguration. So we've seen that overwork the server before. Microsoft best practices is always create that local copy, and then we'll take it to the cloud, okay? Take it to the offsite location. So if you want to create the local copy, if you already got a means for doing that, you'll select SOS to take that copy up. If you want us to do it, we can do it for you too. We've got a method for doing that. The next question is, are you supplying the client side? And just, Tony, just to get back to your question, we will do exchange down to the mailbox level as well with our tool. All right? The next question from Anthony Bailey, are you supplying the client side and hosting for storage as opposed to just client? Yes. This is the full gamut. The client software plus the storage. I don't think you're going to want to host this data yourself. A, because of the liability involved and the insurance premiums you're going to pay, but also the amount of labor it's going to take to do that. We wanted you to be able to do this very flexibly through us. We've got the award-winning solution. Let us handle it. Next question, Sanji, can we back up SQL databases? Of course, yes. As I mentioned, we do utilize the VSS API. Several of our customers have used it to back up SQL in live fashion. I don't recommend it, though. SQL has its own native function to create a backup folder, which you can activate and use SOS to back up that backup folder. Now, as long as that naming convention isn't changing and that folder is overriding itself on a regular basis, we're just going to take the incremental changes on that on a nightly basis and give you a full versioning history of it. Okay, so you don't need to save full copies of that database. We'll save them for you for free. Next question, Mark. Android support. Mark, to answer your question, we are working on the mobile platforms. We have an iPhone application that is due for release, as well as the BlackBerry application. We are working on Android that will be soon following. It's similar technology. Okay. Now, you can access data from a cell phone, meaning you can access backed up material from that network from a cell phone through the mobile portal, which I'll show you in a second. All right. So we do have the ability to allow cell phones to access backed up data. Tony asking again, is the backup block-based or file-based? So Tony, it's not going to be the entire file that gets taken up, as long as it's over a certain threshold, and you can determine the threshold of what is cached. But we're simply just going to be taking the incremental changes. As long as it's below, I believe, 500 kilobytes, it's going to actually just take the changes. Okay, Sanjit, your question is, are there any ports needed to be open to access the file? Now, I'm gonna defer to my technicians on there, but it's the standard ports. I think it's 80 and 443. I may be blowing that completely. Remember, I'm not a technician, but there's a pretty standard in and out ports that are used. Don Hedges is asking, what is the guarantee against data loss? Well, Don, we've never lost data. We've never lost data. But let's just say worst case scenario, it happens. Okay, you want to make sure that you're covered in that respect. Don, we're present in that EULA agreement, shielding you from any kind of liability if that happens. Based on our mirroring capability and the redundancy that's baked in, that's just not going to happen. Okay, it's just not going to happen. But rest assured, if it were to happen, some kind of Armageddon scenario, we are liable. We're present in that EULA agreement for the storage purposes. Okay? Great. Well, it looks like I've answered a majority of the questions. If there are no more, I'm going to go on to the pricing portion of the conversation. One more from Sanjit. What is the minimum internet connection speed at client end? Well, you could have dial-up. I mean, I don't recommend it because it's going to just upset you and frustrate you. But, you know, DSL connectivity speed, usually the industry average with even DSL is about 1 gig an hour. So just to benchmark that. But it depends on the file type, and obviously if it's not DSL connection, the other type of connection that it's going to be. All right? The great part about it is that you can flexibly choose when that backup occurs so that it's going up in the most expeditious manner, or when, let's just say, the network's not being clogged. Now, just to go over that point, that brings up another great point, Sanjay. The product is intuitive enough to back off on its own. So as far as bandwidth consumption goes, this product is not a hog. It's going to throttle itself. It backs off to any of the priority functions that are running. It will not prioritize itself over them, so not to worry. But in the event you are worried, you can schedule it to occur whenever you want. So let's go to the pricing discussion, why don't we? I've modeled a pretty general, I've done hundreds of ROI discussions, and we deal with one-man shops, we deal with large IT consultant firms that have 10 technicians in the field, and we deal with ISPs. So, you know, across the board, there's no partner that does not meet or succeed with our model. So I'm going to go through a pretty general ROI discussion with you and make it as short and sweet as possible. But I would definitely advise you to contact your sales rep or call into the 800 number to get a more personal ROI sheet done for you and yourself. Okay, so let's analyze this. What here I've done is I put the typical type of client that we see in this space. The first customer would be the SMB customer that has maybe 50 seats in the network. The second type of client would be a specialized sector, which would be the medical healthcare, finance, law, government, education, any sector that's going to have compliancy statutes that need to be met. We check off all those boxes. So you're not going to be limited to who you can sell to with this product, which is great. And based on the lack of supply to those specialized sectors, you're going to have a great solution for them. There's very few solutions out there that have not only a safe encryption method with a single decryption key option and have that full archiving forever for free, okay? If there are some, please let me know. I haven't seen many out there. The next type of client may be the home consumer. There may be some of you out there that are dealing with the home consumer. The name of the game with the home consumer is obviously volume, okay? Those home consumers tend to be more labor intensive, and the price points are lower. It doesn't mean you can't still make money off them and give them a great solution. And many of our partners will actually just market it at cost, just to give some of their home consumers a great product and keep them coming back. See, if you're a break-fix shop and you don't have reoccurring revenue coming in, or a reason for this customer to come in more often than every 1 to 3 years, this is a great way to keep them coming back to you, okay? So in addition to that, I'm going to analyze another type of client, which would be your marketing campaign. If this product did everything you wanted it to, you're going to market it to a greater number of applicants, meaning an old email database, maybe purchase new leads. You're going to want to make more money, so you're going to go out and market it to maybe some more SMB or home consumers. Right now, we'll just analyze the SMB marketing. So I'm going to analyze a very typical customer, a typical type of partner who has maybe 30 opportunities in the SMB space. Hey, you may only have 5, but if all 5 of those are going to take, great. We're going to analyze 30 right now, okay, and only acknowledge a portion of those taking the product. In the specialized sector, we'll say you have 2 customers. Let's just say you have 50 home customers, the home consumers that want the product, and then you're going to market this to maybe 200 more different businesses in your region, whether it's via email campaign, mailers, however you want to hand those out, on the corner, however you want to do that, okay? Typically, the amount of data that I see that needs to be backed up in the SMB space is going to be right around the 50 gig mark. I'm going to say there's a spectrum of maybe 50 gigs to 150 gigs, but we're going to analyze a very conservative figure initially, all right? So I'm going to put 50 gigs in here. It's the typical amount of data that client is going to need backed up off-site, okay? Now, in the specialized sector, they may have bigger files. If it's a medical office, they may have some big CAT files or those medical database that might be a little bit bigger. I'll put 75, and these are low estimates, okay? You can always change these numbers once you get the sheet to identify with your current market space. The next would be the home consumer. Statistics across the industry for the home consumer is that they only use about 5 to 10 gigs. Now, you may have those consumers that decide, hey, I want to back up my entire iTunes cache. That rarely happens, okay? And any solution that tells you they've got an unlimited plan is going to throttle you to 2 to 4 gigs a day, and it's going to take months, if not a year, to get that whole initial upload done, all right? So we're going to talk about a 10 gig package for them, all right, which is more than enough for that home consumer. Their pain point is price, and we're going to try to get them in between the $60 and $100 mark on a per year basis. And then SMB marketing, we'll say they have 50 gigs as well, okay? This conservative adoption rate means how many of the opportunities we've listed here are going to take the product. Every one of you are going to have different answers, but I'm just going to analyze some conservative figures. Let's say 35% of those 30 opportunities take the product. And out of the specialized sector, let's say one of those customers takes, so 50%. Out of the home consumers, let's just say maybe 10% take, okay? And out of the SMB marketing,